Welcome to Playing Above the Line's very first mini-series. I'm Alan, your host, and this episode is one of 10 we're recording with T.R. Miller's legendary football coach, Jamie Riggs. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth.
So after I retired, my wife Becky was excited about the fact that I would not be coaching on Friday night. Now, I'm not saying that she was excited about me being out of coaching, but as far as the games, she suffered in the games. And so the thought that she didn't have to go through that again, she was pretty excited about. And so she had been through many, many years of being a coach's wife, and she was feeling kind of good. So I sat down and I wrote this one about her, and it's called Pet Peeves and a Coach's Wife.
This is appropriate because this is playoff week, and I would imagine, as with coaching, coaches' wives get a little bit more on edge, and the pressure's a little bit more as the stakes get higher. I can't wait to hear this one.
Most people have pet peeves, something that may not bother others, but just seems to drive them crazy. A pet peeve may go back to a person's past or could just be something that they feel should never happen. Football coaches may have multiple pet peeves. One of mine was running on and off the field. That was one of those discipline things that my coaches emphasized in the 70s. I never failed to get on a player for walking on or off the field. The other was about wearing our T.R. Miller colors. When you dress for workouts or practice, you were to have on red, white, black or gray, or some other kind of neutral color like khaki I could probably live with. If a player showed up at practice with blue socks on, trust me, he was about to leave. My wife, Becky, had some pet peeves. One of hers was putting ketchup on her cooking. She took that as a personal insult, although she got a little better with that as our two boys grew up. Another of her pet peeves was the boys and I talking football at the dinner table. She had several pet peeves when it came to eating. One of the things that she disliked about football was the fans yelling crazy stuff at the players and coaches. So when Becky met me, I was already a coach, and she went through a football season when we were dating. But I was an assistant coach at the time, and there is a difference. During the games, the fans mostly yell at the head coach when things don't go well. That was also back in the early 80s, and things were a little calmer than in later years when the internet made everyone an expert on everything, including coaching football. People in the stands tend to yell stuff about the players and coaches without concern for who was sitting around them. Former Miller coach Mike Sasser's wife, Anne Marie, once told Becky that she thought people yelling negative stuff at your coaching husband was bad until she had two sons that played quarterback for T.R. Miller. She said that was worse. I can't really imagine what it must have been like for Becky at the games when I was coaching and my youngest son, Will, was playing quarterback. It was a double dip of misery. Michael had saved her by playing wide receiver and defensive back a few years earlier. Now, Becky, she hated close games. Nobody loved a blowout better than her. She could be relaxed all week if she thought the team we were playing wasn't really good and could enjoy going to the game. She rarely asked about the skill level of our opponent. Anybody who knows football knows that this is bad luck. But she would check out their record and ask others. The first couple of years after we came to coach at Miller during close games, she would leave the stands, go down to the end zone, and stand down there around the fence surrounding the field. If someone started getting on me, she would just move to a different part of the track. Occasionally, she would tell me what they said and who said it. I would just laugh. One of the advantages of coaching in your hometown is that you know just about everyone, which for some strange reason didn't make her feel any better. Down through the years, she would at times ask me one of the questions when I got home that apparently she heard the fans yelling during the game. Something like, "Why didn't you change quarterbacks?" As time went on, we had success. Now, don't think winning makes it any better. Winning increases the pressure. Now, everyone thinks you should win every game. If you don't, someone must shoulder the blame. And as the head coach, that someone was usually me. By the playoffs in 1991, Becky could no longer take it. During the close games at home, she started leaving the stadium and walking Escambia Avenue behind the stadium. There, she could relax a little bit. Did not have to hear the complaints, but could still hear the crowd react. If the home fans were really going crazy, she might come back to the stadium and check out what happened. This went on for years. In 2002, we were playing Montgomery Academy in the semifinals in Montgomery. It was a close game that we managed to finally salt away in the last minute or two. After shaking hands and doing some interviews, I headed back to our dressing room, which was located outside the stadium. As I went past one of the school buildings, I saw Becky coming up the sidewalk. When I inquired what she was doing, she said, "Well, I left in the third quarter, but there's no road to walk down. So I just went behind one of those buildings over there and sat down." Did we win? Sometimes Becky would go inside the press box to get away from everyone. She would stand up there and talk to the referee that was supposed to be keeping the game clock. I'm pretty sure that they knew she was my wife, and so they were pretty nice to her and tolerated her questions. In later years, we put a flat top on the press box to video from up there, and she would go up and watch close games from top of the press box. Now back to pet peeves. In 1993, we played Opp in Bruton the week before we played Neal. Becky was a cheerleader at Opp in the late 70s, and I had been the head coach there before coming to Bruton. The game was postponed to Saturday because of a storm, and between the postponement and everyone worrying about beating Neal the next week, we lost a close game to a good Opp team on Saturday night. When I got home, she asked me, "Can you tell me exactly why we lost to Opp?" I tried to be calm and explain, but she wouldn't hear it. "That's ridiculous," she said. "I'm sleeping on the couch tonight." Apparently, she had a pet peeve about losing to the Bobcats. It would be 21 years before we lost to Opp again. I was quiet when I entered the house after the second loss, this time about 1 a.m. I checked the bedroom and she was asleep in the bed. Just to be sure, I decided to sleep on the couch. There were some other times that going home was tough after a game. When my son Michael was in the 10th grade, he was playing some at wide receiver during the regular season. When we got into the first tough playoff game, he didn't play much. When I got home, Becky asked me, why didn't Michael play much tonight? Now, I'd had a lot of experience dealing with angry parents. I immediately recognized her as an angry parent. So once again, I calmly explained that he had done nothing wrong, but as the competition got tougher, we had to play our most experienced and best players. I thought I did a pretty good job of that, and after all the years as a coach's wife, she would understand. After about 10 seconds of silence, she looked me right in the eye and said, "I'm sleeping on the couch tonight." But of all of the things that drove Becky crazy about high school football games, nothing topped her dislike for the referees. My beautiful, sweet wife just lost her mind when it came to the referees. In the 30-plus years of our marriage, I never recall her saying that she thought that the referees did a good job. She had some questions that I had to answer after almost every game. First question was usually, where were those referees from? Or on away games, she would sometimes tell me that she heard at the game that the officials were all from the hometown of our opponent. Many times Becky would ask me questions about certain calls. Why did they call that penalty on us when we scored? Did we really commit that penalty, or were they just trying to keep us from scoring? The worst part was that on occasions, she felt like they were so bad that she felt the need to tell them in person. I would get home after a game and she would say, "The referees were terrible. I told that tall one about it when they were going off the field at halftime." I would admonish her for that, and I would say, "Do you know that they can put you in jail now for harassing officials?" Becky would then answer, "Well, I just thought that they ought to call holding on both teams." Now, my oldest son, Michael, probably holds the record for most penalties committed in a T.R. Miller football career. He was called for them all: illegal procedure, holding, personal fouls, etc. After the game, she would say, "Was that holding penalty on Michael? Everyone in the stands said that it was. Why did he do it? Doesn't he know he isn't supposed to hold?" She would be unhappy with me because it was embarrassing for her that Michael was committing penalties being the coach's son. She thought that I ought to be a better coach than that. There were times when it was easier to throw the referees under the bus. I don't think it was holding, I would say. It was a bad call. I think that referee was from Andalusia. Being from Opp, I knew that she still had a decades-old dislike for Andalusia. One year we traveled to Thomasville to play, and the referees were pretty rough on us that night. Becky had already come out of the stands to watch on the fence, and when the officials walked by at halftime, she got on them pretty good. She told me that she was yelling pretty loud at them when she heard one of her fourth-grade students say, "Hey, Mom, that's my teacher yelling at the referees." When we started Tire Talk at Oaks Cafe, Becky loved going there every Thursday afternoon. She loved seeing the players and the parents. She tends to be a little social, and getting a bite to eat on the outside deck at Oaks. She hated missing when she had another commitment. Every time we went to commercial, she would lead the applause and yell, "Go Tigers." She was always our greatest cheerleader. I can tell you that over the years, she bought everything that had T.R. Miller on it. Melanie McGugan at Just Do would call Becky every time they got something new that had T.R. Miller on it, and Becky would go get one. She had all sorts of red and black stuff in her wardrobe. She always bought Big Red gum to her class on Fridays. If the kids would say, "Go Big Red," they would get a piece. Now that's school spirit. People have been very kind to me in Bruton, still asking how I'm enjoying being retired from coaching football. The truth is that we retired from coaching. Many years ago, I heard a great college coach say at a clinic, "Surround yourself with great people if you want to have success." The old coach was right. He was talking about having great quarterbacks or offensive line coach or defensive coordinator. To young coaches, I would say that the first person on that list should be a first-class wife. You can trust me on this one because I had the best wife a coach could ever have.
Coach, I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer that there are certain professions that require calling teachers, doctors, policemen, and coaches' wives, right? I mean, it takes a special person to live through, what Miss Becky has gone through being your wife, and bless her, she deserves to have a few pet peeves having to do that. So she's been a big supporter of yours, I know, over the years.
It has been, and part of the thing is in a small town, if you're in a bigger place, you can kind of disappear a little bit. In a small town, especially in football season, it's important to everybody. There's a lot of people talking about it all over town. She would go in the grocery store or something, and she'd be going down the aisle, and she can hear them talking about this over here. And they might be talking about me or something crazy I did at the game, or why did I, And so she just had to kind of live with that. It was part of it. She learned to kind of ignore it, but there were some times that she just felt she had to ask a question.
Yeah, and I do remember her walks down Escambia Avenue in Bruton are legendary. You'd see Miss Becky leave, and you know where she was going. She just couldn't take it anymore. Coach, this has been great. I'm going to encourage people. This has been an 11-part miniseries that we've done, and all these are based on the stories that Coach Riggs wrote when he was coaching when he retired at Miller, and so he's actually put these together in a book. And as soon as that book is published and is available, we will mention that on the podcast. But be on the lookout for that, because this is going to be a great collection of his stories and experiences over his many years of coaching. But Coach Riggs, thank you so much. This has been a great series.
Thank you, Alan.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. And as always, a big thank you to producer and editor Carrie Wolf. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Avizo Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avizogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.